That's a Tupelo right there?
Yes, these are all Tupelo trees.
And they grow
Tall ones.
because they're in a lower area and they can...
They're protected.
Were they planted?
No, they're a natural tree. The Tupelo, or another name for them, is black gum. Or over on the vineyard, they call them beetle bung trees because it's a very tough, fibrous wood, and they used to make mallets that they called beetles to drive the bungs into the whale oil casks. It's a natural tree here. It will grow in these wet areas. You notice this is Almanac Pond right on our left. It's one of the natural kettle hole ponds left here by the glacier. And these trees will survive. They'll be able to absorb some oxygen out of the top layer, and that's why you find the Tupelos here. The other ones you find in these low wetland areas are the swamp red maple. A lot of swamp red maples around here. And again, they have a very shallow root system. They're specifically adapted to these wet, kind of marshy, swampy conditions.
So now, were these roads designed for anything at one point, or what? Why are they here? Why are
most of these roads were actually the original trails that the natives, the Indians that lived here, they used because they would move winter to summer from the inland areas, from these sheltered areas, because we're in these depressed areas. They're protected from the constant winds. They would be on the south-facing slopes. Most of these kettle hole ponds, these are formed by the glacier, and they have water in them, fresh water, so there's a source of fresh water. So they would spend the winters inland, and then during the summer they would move out to the beaches where they could collect shellfish, they would fish, they would hunt, and that sort of thing. And again, we have a fair amount of information about where their settlements were. So most of these trails were trails from their winter to their summer places, and then when the first European settlers arrived in 1659, they would use these same trails to drive their cattle, their sheep, the cows, horses, whatever. And then over time, these same roads, when they started harvesting cranberries here in the 1850s, the roads were already here. They're all single lane sand roads, and they just followed the old trails. Careful, this is greenbrier. It's got thorns on it.
Oh, okay. It's a lot worse in the spring, right?
Yeah.
Now, did you learn all about plants and trees and things like that while you became...
Yeah.
You didn't know anything about it before then?
Well, I knew a little bit about it. I've always been interested in earth science. In fact, as I said, I was an English major in college. I've got a master's in 18th century English literature. But I've always been interested in geology, geography. And I think if I ever went back to school, that's what I would major in. I love geography. I love reading about places and things. And so it was just sort of a natural curiosity. I'd say, gee, what's this tree doing here? How did these roads get here? Why is this pond here? Why, and so it was through my own curiosity of asking those questions that I'd read about them and learn and so on.
So what kind of animals does this kettle pond support?
Oh, there's a whole range. There are all sorts of amphibians, frogs, turtles, this sort of thing that are, hibernate in the muck in the bottom. On the insects, there are water striders, whirligigs, all sorts of bugs and spiders and things like that that are another layer. Birds. It's like every 3 or 4 feet, there's another layer of the canopy, and different birds will use, either they're looking for insects or they're nesting and so on, up until, into the higher trees.
Any fish?
Yes. Now, this particular pond, I'm not sure if there's a fish population here. Probably not. One of the important things about these ponds all through here, the vernal ponds as they're referred to, they don't support a fish population because many of them dry out for a couple of months during the summer. And then one of the characteristics of these kettle holes is that there's no inflow or outflow of water, so all the water is from runoff from the surrounding hilltops. And if they don't support a fish population, as a lot of these smaller ponds don't, perfect for frogs, salamanders, other amphibians that would lay their eggs in the water. Many of them do. For example, Gibbs Pond is also a kettle hole pond, and that has, you know, white perch, pickerel.
Was that put in there, or were
no,
they actually?
No, they're
from.
They're native. Or
That's
well,
amazing though.
When you think about it, this whole area was covered with ice as recently as 12,000 years ago. There was nothing here. Nothing here. It's estimated that the sheet of ice in this whole row of hills, by the way, that bisects Nantucket, is literally the edge of the ice sheet, the furthest southern advance of the glacier. And it's estimated that the ice sheet right here where we're standing was about 12 to 1,500 feet thick. It extended back thousands of miles north and west of here to a thickness of over 2 miles. There was nothing here. Ice, water, rock, gravel, that was it. I've counted over 70 of these kettle hole ponds just within a mile radius of Heath House, the ranger station. What I'll usually do in the wintertime is I'll follow the deer trails and I'll sort of crawl on my hands and knees to see what's in there. And that's where I'll discover some. And if I find something really interesting, then I'll make a, cut a little trail into it, and that sort of thing. The natives actually preferred this part of the island because of the topography, because of the hilly nature of the glacial moraine that we're in. Everything on the south part of the island, of course, is an outwash plain, so it's much flatter. They didn't have the protection, that sort of thing. The freshwater kettle hole ponds, they're all in the northeast part of the island. And so this was the prime land up here, particularly, as I say, around Quidnet, around Squam. All of this northeastern portion of the island was the sort of prime property. In fact, when the first European settlers arrived in 1659, they were sold, the west end, the so-called Badlands out in Madaket, and because it wasn't as productive as the good lands over here on the northeastern part of the island.